On today's show, Michael Porter Jr. gets his revenge while leading the Nets to a decisive win over the Nuggets, and Sharpe shines in an expanded role. I'll offer my top takeaways from the performance on today's episode of Locked On Nets.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to Locked On Nets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Now the number one sports podcast network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. I'm your host, Erik Slater, Brooklyn Nets beat reporter for ClutchPoints.com. Thank you for making me your first listen of the day. The show is 100% free on all those great platforms. And on today's episode, I'm going to be recapping the Nets' 127-115 win over the Denver Nuggets on Sunday at Barclays Center, a game that both sides surely had circled on their calendar for some time. That's obviously due to the offseason trade that swapped Michael Porter Jr. and Cam Johnson, also sent a first-round pick to the Nets. But the game lost a little bit of its luster because Cam Johnson's obviously sidelined by a knee injury. He didn't even make the trip to Brooklyn. The Nuggets are also without Nikola Jokic, Jonas Valanciunas, so they're shorthanded. But still, there was juice in the building on both sides. I talked to the Nets before the game. I talked to the Nuggets before the game. And Michael Porter Jr., this is a game that he really wanted to win. The Nuggets, all those guys, Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon, the former teammates who had played with Michael Porter Jr., they wanted to crack at MPJ amid all the talk of what he's been doing. And Michael Porter Jr. comes out victorious. And the Nets play a pretty good two-way basketball game. And Michael Porter Jr. once again leads the way as 27 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists, 8 of 17 from the field, 2 of 6 from 3, 9 of 9 from the free throw line. And this is just another Michael Porter Jr. performance. I mean, he came out hot. He stayed hot for most of the game. And this is just what Michael Porter Jr. does at this point. Like 27, 11, and 5 on decent efficiency. That's like a normal game for him. He has bad games where he's putting up 25 points and near 10 rebounds on good efficiency. Like, it's just what he's been doing for the Nets for a while now, for nearly the whole season. He finishes a team best plus 22. Briefly on some of the other points of the game, I thought the Nets did a really good job defensively to start this one on Jamal Murray. We talked to Jordi Fernandez before the game, and with Nikola Jokic out, obviously, the Nets' focus was going directly towards Jamal Murray. I mean, Aaron Gordon and Christian Brown came back in this game from extended absences, but they were limited and didn't really look like themselves. So Jamal Murray was the focus, and he finishes with 27 points on 11 of 23 shooting, but a lot of that was down the stretch of the game after the Nets went up 20 in the fourth quarter, and it really was already decided. He had a lot of assists, but the Nets were doubling Jamal Murray. They were trying to force some of the other Nuggets to beat them, and those guys really couldn't. And then offensively for the Nets, Michael Porter Jr. has a big game. Noah Clowney has a big game. Sharpe does big things. Cam Thomas turns it up at the end. But the Nets were up for almost this whole game, and then they went up big in the fourth quarter, and they never really looked back. But back to MPJ in this one. I mean, he finishes a team best plus 22. Really good performance. And MPJ, I mean, I just continue to say it, but since the Nets 0-7 start, he's playing at an all-star level, and his impact cannot be denied. I mean, this was before this. Nets obviously had the game against the Rockets where he sits out. Their offense completely falls off a cliff. They have the game against the Wizards where multiple guys are out, but then MPJ comes back, and they really just pick up where they left off, and they look like a respectable, competent basketball team. And since the 0-7 start, I mean, I said MPJ is playing at an all-star level. He's at 27.3 points, 7.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists on 50, 43, 83 shooting splits over his last 21 games. And the Nets are 11-10 during that span. So Michael Porter Jr.'s impact is undeniable. And you look at what he did in this game. I mean, I've said it, but the shot making is just at a completely ridiculous level. I have not seen a player on the Nets outside of Kevin Durant who can make the kinds of shots that MPJ is making. I mean, the Nuggets were clearly, just as the Nets were clearly focused, not solely, but primarily on Jamal Murray, the Nuggets were paying that much attention to Michael Porter Jr. during this game. You looked at what they were doing. They knew that the Nets' entire offense is crafted around MPJ's off-ball movement, and they were putting a ton of attention. Anytime Michael Porter Jr. came off a screen, off the ball or on the ball, the Nuggets were showing two players to him. And despite that, he was still able to get going. He was still able to finish with 27 points, 5 assists on good efficiency. And that just speaks to the shot making and the level that Michael Porter Jr. is playing at. I mean, there were 2 shots in this game, and there's shots like this every game for Michael Porter Jr., but there were actually 3 shots in this game where you almost fall out of your seat because you just can't believe what Michael Porter Jr. is doing in terms of the shot making. There was a 3 at the top of the key where he caught the ball late in the shot clock, and Bruce Brown was literally like standing an inch away from Michael Porter Jr. He might have actually been touching him, and Michael Porter Jr. rises up above him, hits a 3. There was another shot on the baseline where Christian Braun was guarding him, and he's like late in the shot clock. He turns around. Christian Braun has a hand in his face to the point where it looks like Mike can't even see the basket, and he still splashes it. There was another 3 on the right wing in the second half where he hits a step back over Tim Hardaway Jr., where like he doesn't even have an inch of space. Like he's hitting shots from like 25 feet where guys are legitimately like touching his body and completely in his airspace as he's shooting it. And he doesn't care. And he takes some ridiculous shots. Like there's some shots that would be bad shots for a lot of guys, and I don't think that they're great shots all the time, but Mike is proving time and time again that he can make them. And on top of that, in this game, he's playing the right way. I mean, I said 5 assists. He had other passes where he, could have had more assists if you talk about like the hockey assists. He had a drive where he went to the basket, hit a really nice skip pass, Nets hit an extra pass. It leads to a Noah Clowney 3. Another one where he's getting doubled. He rose up across a few guys and kind of like hooked a pass into the middle that led to an alley-oop. So it's just MPJ playing the right way, in my opinion. It's him continuing to look extremely comfortable, this whole Nets team looking extremely comfortable with the offense crafted around him. And like, sure, as I said, does he take shots that a lot of people would consider bad shots sometimes? Yes, but he's proven he can make them, and he's consistently making the right play. Like he's getting the ball where it needs to be. Like there aren't that many times where you see Michael Porter Jr. where you're like, wow, like that guy's wide open. He should be getting the ball, and he isn't. Like when they're showing a lot of attention to him, he gets rid of the ball and he gets it to the right spot. And I think a lot of that is due to his size. And like that's a criticism that I have for Cam Thomas, that he doesn't get the ball to the right spot sometimes when teams double him. And I think that part of that is the mindset that he's slow to want to pass the ball, but also it's just the height and the size. And like Cam Thomas, you see it with the 6'3" guy versus when he gets shown all the attention versus versus a Michael Porter Jr. type guy who does his damage primarily off the ball. But when he does get those doubles, he's 6'10", and he can see and make the right pass and get the ball where it needs to be on schedule and on time. So I just can't say enough about what Michael Porter Jr. has been doing. And now, with the Nets beating the Nuggets in this one, like you just look back on the trade and it just continues to look like a home run trade for the Nets. And I got to talk to David Adelman, the Nuggets head coach, before the game, and he felt that he said, I think it was a good trade for everybody. I think that, in my opinion, that's what Adelman said. I think it's looking a little better for the Nets than the Nuggets right now because they got that unprotected 2032 first-round pick. They also have, Michael Porter Jr. is looking like a far superior player to Cam Johnson this season. Obviously, the context of their roles could not look more different, but, Cam Johnson is hurt again, which had been a concern for him. But at the end of the day, it was about financial savings for Denver. But you look at it, and, David Adelman said about MPJ, I asked him about the role and, like, what he's doing right now and the efficiency that he's be able to have in this number one role. What did he think about that? Did the Nuggets always think that MPJ had that in him, but the circumstances and the role just didn't really allow him to do that? And Adelman said that he thought that MPJ sacrificed, but he thought that, when you win a championship, I don't think you can ever say that the role was wrong. So he said that he thought that they used him the right way in Denver. He thought that MPJ would disagree with him. But I talked to MPJ after the game, and, I've talked to MPJ since the offseason, since Summer League, and he's told me that he felt that he had a lot more to offer in Denver, but they just didn't need him to do that because of the supporting cast was so good. And he said that, you look at him, he did still accept that role, and he took that role. He had no issues with it. And he said post-game today that he felt that that was the price of being on a really good team for a long time. But now, with him coming to Brooklyn, he was excited about it, and I'm sure that he's loving it right now, man. I mean, like, he's going to be a free agent after next season. He's putting up career best numbers. He's in an all-star conversation. He's finally getting to do some of these things that a lot of people, in his words, probably didn't think that he would be able to do. And he's done that, and you look at that, with that, you ask, like, what is his value around the league? And it's going to be a really, really interesting conversation leading up to the trade deadline, because you talk to some people, and some people will say, like, yeah, he's this great player, but he's in this number one type role that he's not going to be in a lot of other situations where he might get traded to. And they'll also point to, like, he's a knucklehead with the off-court stuff, some of the things that he has to say about certain things. And I understand that, like, that can be a distraction. I understand, obviously, why some of the things that he says are so polarizing. But I'll say, from my experience, that he comes off very self-aware when he's talking about himself in a basketball context. He just says, like, a lot of things that I frankly feel are pretty insightful. And like, he has a pretty good grasp on what he's trying to do, in terms of him being a basketball player moving forward in his career. Like, he had a quote today. We talked to him post game, and he said, he was asked about, his breakout with the Nets and his expectations when he entered the league. And he said that when he came into the league, that he was expecting to be the best player in the NBA. Like, that was his expectation. Number 2 recruit in the country coming out of high school. He thought he was going to be that kind of guy, but then injuries kind of caught up with him. Obviously, like, that played a pretty debilitating role with him early on, but he said that, through perseverance and determination, he was able to overcome that, and he's really proud of the role that he's been able to carve out in the NBA post-injuries. So I just think, like, all that, I think he's pretty insightful. He doesn't seem like a bad guy at all. Like, I think all the guys in the Nets locker room are enjoying playing with him. They better enjoy playing with him with all the open looks that he's getting for other guys based on how much gravity he has. And you just, like, look at the on-court stuff. Like, there's no doubt that he can play a big role on a winning team at the highest level. Like, he's done it, and teams know that part of it. The question is going to be, what are teams willing to pay? And, are the Nets viewing him as a long-term piece? And I've been pretty clear that with where the Nets are at in their timeline, with the way that MPJ is playing right now, I think that they're going to have to strongly consider trades. Now, are they going to get an offer that they deem to their liking? That remains to be seen, but there's a lot of teams like Jake Fisher, I spoke about it a couple episodes, put out a report about all the teams that were starting to kind of kick the tires on Michael Porter Jr., at least internally. The Pistons, the Bucks, the Warriors, the Bulls were mentioned as a team. There's a few other teams that I could name that I think could get involved. And, all those teams are going to have first-round picks to offer, or at least a first-round pick, and they all have big expiring salaries. And I've said, my stance has been in this, I don't really think that there's anything that's going to change it. But if the Nets can get a good first-round pick for Michael Porter Jr. and they can get a big expiring contract, I'm not sure that you can pass up that opportunity with where the Nets are at in their timeline. And it's nothing against MPJ. If he were a couple of years younger and didn't have the injury history, I'd be all for keeping him. But with where the Nets are at in their timeline, with where MPJ is at in his timeline, and with his injury history, I just think it makes way more sense to cash in on the value that he has, have clean books moving forward, and add to that league-leading asset pool. And I'm going to talk about this with potential trades that have been floated. But if the Nets can get, as I said, an expiring contract and a good first-round pick, you're turning, Cam Johnson into 2 good first-round picks, and then you have expiring contract that turns into a big chunk of cap space this offseason. You can keep this like asset pool churning with having the cap space until you're going to be really, truly competitive again. You can keep taking on other contracts, getting more first-round picks. And, the return for Kevin Durant at this point has already turned into just a monumental, historic return. And Sean Marks has the ability to kind of keep that, pick glitch or whatever you want to call it churning through that. So do I think the Nets have to trade MPJ? No, but I do think that he's going to generate a lot of interest based on what he's been doing. And I think that they're going to have to consider it. And it's going to be the main talking point surrounding this Nets team leading up to the trade deadline, especially with them especially with them being in, a tanking situation, and how do they kind of balance those two things? So I'm going to more coverage of that. We also had a bunch of other guys who had really productive performances in this win for the Nets. Day'Ron Sharpe is the main one that I want to talk about because he has gotten an expanded role over these last 2 games with Nick Claxton out for personal reason. And he has taken that and he's run with it. And it's raising some questions, or it will raise some questions about how the Nets approach the center position moving forward. So what do I think about that conversation? I'll get into all that when I continue Locked On Nets after a quick break. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Whether you're starting a new routine or jumping into player projections for the first time, trying something new can feel like a challenge. But with PrizePicks, it always feels good to be right. With high-pressure football matchups every weekend and elite hoops action almost every night, the action never slows down, and PrizePicks lets you stay in control. PrizePicks is the daily fantasy app that makes watching sports even more exciting by letting you build lineups based on player projections. No drafts, no waiting. Just pick more or less and play your way. Getting started on PrizePicks was quick and simple. The app is super easy to navigate. It's made watching games more engaging, especially when following individual performances. The flexibility with options like Flex Play, where you can still get paid even if one pick misses, are great. And the new early payouts feature is a game changer. If a player starts hot, you can cash out before the game ends. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineup after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. Coming back from the break on today's Locked On Nets episode, recapping Brooklyn's win over Denver on Sunday at Barclays Center. And I want to talk about Day'Ron Sharpe because Day'Ron Sharpe continues to just be a very steady, a very productive player who had been waiting for his, true expanded opportunity. And he's gotten it in these last two games with Nick Claxton sidelined for personal reasons. The Nets expect Claxton back with the team on Monday. So Day'Ron's going to go back to a bench role. But in these last two games, Day'Ron has had performances that I do think kind of raise questions or bring questions to the forefront that were already there about how the Nets were going to handle this center position. Because you look at it in this game, Day'Ron had, and this is coming off of a very, I would say a really, really high-level performance against the Wizards, despite the Nets, losing decisively in that one. Day'Ron in this game has 17 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 turnover. So great job taking care of the ball there. 3 steals, 1 block, 6 of 9 from the field in 32 minutes. And Day'Ron's just a guy who continues to produce in the opportunities that he's given. And no matter what those opportunities are, he just does it with the right attitude. He's a team-first guy. He's in the locker room. He's doing all these things. And he's really like just a consummate professional that you want in and around your team. And I think that at this point, it's fair to say with what Day'Ron's been able to do last season and going into this season, the production that he's been able to have consistently, it's fair to say that like he deserves a chance to be a starting center in the NBA, whether for the Nets or whether for someone else. And that's obviously going to be the conversation. But just, hitting on Day'Ron Sharpe's attitude quickly, because I just think that he has done everything the Nets have asked of him, and he's done it without raising any issues in the locker room, despite having a good case for deserving an expanded role. Like you look at it last season, he's coming off a career best season. When he had, best numbers across the board. The Nets rewarded him with a 2-year, $12 million contract, which I frankly thought I thought he was going to get more than that, and he doesn't end up doing that. And despite coming off that career best season, he's playing less this year than he played last season. He's playing like 16.7 minutes per game this year. He played 18 minutes per game last season. And despite that, you would think a lot of guys would say, I'm coming off a career best year. I just got a contract. Why am I playing less minutes? It should be more of an even split between me and Claxton, despite it, instead of it being, further in one direction this year. And despite that, Day'Ron just continues to work. He continues to get better, and he continues to do all the right things. And you look at Day'Ron, like I think you saw it, especially in these last two games. If you talk to people around the Nets organization, all they talk about is they rave about what a worker Day'Ron is, the work that he puts into the offseason, anything they ask him to do, anything that they say that he needs to improve on. There's never any pushback. It's yes, like I need to get better at that. This is how I'm going to do it. And he does it. And we talked to him about it post-game, and he said like he's just very aware of the things that he needs to get better at. And in the offseason, he puts the consistent work in. And I think that his body is a great example of that, because you look at it, he came into the league and he was this guy who had some of the baby fat on him. He was a little bit slower, like kind of this plodding center. And that was a concern about him coming out of the draft. And that showed up in the first couple of seasons. Like he couldn't guard on the perimeter. He couldn't play drop coverage. He couldn't play in between two guys. He just wasn't quick enough at the NBA level. And since then, he's cut off that body fat. He looks great while maintaining his strength. And defensively, he's just been, everything that the Nets could have hoped for in terms of his development. He's been able to. Last season, the Nets are blitzing. He's able to play this coverage where he blitzes and recovers. Now they're playing at the level. He's able to play at the level and recover. He's able to switch sometimes. He's able to play in between two, play drop coverage, all of that, all of the work that he's done in terms of his body, in terms of his mobility, and then also offensively, he's a pretty high-level like finisher this season. He's shooting over 60% from the field. He's been a high-level passer where the Nets have been able to play through him as a hub big man, as they have with Nick Claxton. That's part of what has allowed Michael Porter Jr. to thrive in this off-ball role. He's just done all of that, and he says all the right things. And I asked him, about what his, mindset has been with not getting as many minutes as he did last year, despite coming off a career best season. And he had, a typical Day'Ron type of answer where he said, I'm just grateful for whatever minutes I do get, whether it's, 15 minutes, whether it's 30 minutes. I just try to take advantage of the opportunity. He said there's a lot of guys who would dream about playing in the NBA. There's a lot of players in the NBA who would dream about having a consistent role and getting minutes. So whatever role that he's given, he's, taking advantage of it to the best of his ability. But he also said that he feels like he can play with the best centers in the NBA, and he feels like he's showing that. So that's just a typical Day'Ron answer. And I think that just exemplifies the kind of guy that he is. And, he's, as I said, he's going to deserve an opportunity to be a starting caliber center. And we talked to MPJ after the game and asked about Day'Ron, and MPJ said Day'Ron's a starting center. But he said that the Nets have two starting centers. They have Day'Ron Sharpe, they have Nick Claxton, and they have Day'Ron Sharpe. And I thought that was a really interesting quote, because that's true. And that is raising a lot of questions about what direction do the Nets go moving forward. I'm going to do a full episode on this probably tomorrow with Lucas Kaplan. But the Nets have Nick Claxton. The Nets have Day'Ron Sharpe. Both those guys, like Nick already got paid. Day'Ron is going to deserve to get paid, I think, after this season. He has the team option at $6 million. But if I were the Nets, I'd probably try to lock him up, before that and kind of get out ahead of that. And with that, Nick is already making $20 to $23 million, something in that range. Day'Ron's going to deserve a contract that's going to be over $10 million. Do I think the Nets want to, allot that much money, like 30 to 35 or even more $1 million to their center position, per year? I don't think that they want to do that. I don't think that's wise to do in today's NBA. So that raises the question. You got Day'Ron Sharpe, you got Nick Claxton. Probably going to be prudent to move off of one of these guys and cash in. Is that Nick? Is that Day'Ron? How should the Nets be viewing that conversation? We'll see. I'll probably do a full episode on that tomorrow, but that's going to be a conversation moving forward. Next guy I want to touch on quickly is Noah Clowney, because Noah had been struggling in a big way over the last 7 games, and he came out in this one. Really good bounce back effort. Noah had 22 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 6 of 10 from the field, 4 of 6 from 3, 6 of 7 from the free throw line. And Noah was really struggling shooting the ball. He was shooting around 16% from 3 over his last 7 games before tonight. But despite that, he has been really effective driving to the basket, still keeping his two-point volume up, still finishing well on twos, was shooting around 50%. And in this one, he caught his shooting rhythm. He rebounded the ball well. He continued to be aggressive as a driver. He just made a good overall impact. So I think it was really good to see and was really positive to see Noah keep shooting. I mean, through all of these struggles, he's kept putting up the threes. He's kept being aggressive on drives. And I think tonight he really found his shooting rhythm, and he played a huge role in this Nets win. Another guy who had a big role in this game was Cam Thomas. But it was a really funky game. Cam looked very disengaged, I would say, during the first half of this game. He was scoreless. Then he came out in the second half, and he dropped 17 points in the second half. So what did I see from Cam Thomas? What went into kind of the switch up from the first half to the second half, and what should fans make of it? I'll get into all that when I close out Locked On Nets after a quick break. New year, new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our business and think there has to be a better way. And there is. Streamlining your communications is one of the quickest upgrades you can make. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Quo. The smarter way to run your business communications, because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. Guys, I love how simple Quo makes everything. Your whole team can call and text from one shared business number, so nothing gets missed. Everyone sees the full conversation thread, which makes replies faster and more personal. It works right from your phone or computer, and you can even keep your existing number. And Quo's smart AI tools automatically log calls, summarize conversations, and highlight next steps, so details never slip through the cracks. So make this the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free plus 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/lockedonnba. That's quo.com/lockedonnba. Quo. No missed calls, no missed customers. Coming back from the break, closing out today's Locked On Nets episode, talking about Brooklyn's win over Denver. I want to close it out talking about Cam Thomas, because this was a very odd Cam Thomas game, because you look at Cam in the beginning of this game, and we're coming off a Houston game post-game where there were some comments from Cam Thomas. There were some comments from Jordan Fernandez, like Cam got asked about coming off the bench. Is it frustrated to get, for the starters, they had a lot of rookies starting with all these guys out, and Cam was still coming off the bench. Was that frustrated to see those guys lose those minutes and coming off the bench and all that? And Cam said no comment. Jordan Fernandez said that Cam has been scoring at a good level since he came back, but he needs more playmaking. He needs more defense. That's something that Jordy has been saying for a while. And then Cam came out in the first half of this game, and he looked pretty disengaged. He was kind of floating through it. I mean, you look at it, Cam had no points or assists in the first half. He only attempted 1 shot. And the Nuggets were blitzing Cam and trying to get the ball out of his hands. But still with that, I think he was making the right play a lot of the time in the first half. But the engagement, the body language was just not there. He was making the right play, I'd say, a lot of the time. But he wasn't trying to get downhill. He wasn't trying to score. He wasn't trying to get out ahead of double teams. When he got rid of the ball, off the ball, I think that's where it showed up most. He wasn't moving. When Cam's really engaged and he has to get rid of the ball, he's sprinting to try to get to another spot to get the ball back. He wasn't doing that at all. He was kind of just camped out, kind of floating through. And then the second half comes around, and he looks like a completely different player. He comes out in the second half after going scoreless with no assists on one shot in the first half. The second half, he scores 17 points on 5 of 9 shooting with 1 assist. And it's a complete 180 in terms of aggressiveness. Like, he's attacking double teams. Like, sure, he's passing out of them, but he's shooting over people. He's trying to get out in transition. He's trying to get the ball back when he has to give it up. And he ends up scoring 17 points and hitting some really tough shots. And like, I asked Jordy Fernandez about it after the game. Like, during the game, I tweeted, I think one of the Nets coaches, whether it's Jordy or an assistant, had to have talked to Cam at halftime and said, like, snap out of it, like, get into the game. And it seemed like he did. But I asked Jordy about it after the game, and Jordy said that they were doubling him in the first half, and he was getting rid of the ball and making the right play. And, like, the assists and some of those things don't always show up when you're getting blitzed and making that first pass. And, like, I think that that's true, but the Nuggets were also blitzing Cam Thomas in the second half. And he was looking to score around those blitzes. He was looking to get downhill. He was looking to get out in transition. He was moving off the ball, all of those things. So, like, that he was getting blitzed in the first half, but in the second half, it wasn't different to me. So that answer from Jordy doesn't really hold up. And you guys can go back and watch the first half of this game, watch Cam Thomas the whole time, go to the second half of this game, watch Cam Thomas the whole time. It looks like two completely different players. So I don't really know what to make of that. I think the Cam Thomas situation with the Nets is reaching a conclusion. In the first half of this game, I was, after the comments that we had gotten from Cam Thomas and Jordy Fernandez, I was kind of curious. I was like, oh, like, this is kind of interesting. He looks really checked out right now. And then in the second half, he comes out and he looks completely engaged and he's on fire for a lot of the second half. So what do you make of that? I'm not sure. I think that it seems like there's something going on where there's like a little displeasure with the role and what's happening with Cam Thomas. But in the second half of this one, it looked like he had a really good attitude and it looked like he played really hard. It was just a strange game from Cam Thomas all around. Last thing I want to close out on is just talking about Yegor Dioman. I thought Yegor had a really efficient game in this one. He finished with 13 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 turnover, 5 of 9 from the field, 3 of 5 from 3. And the shooting stroke from Yegor, it continues to look pure. He got into the mid-range, hit a mid-range jumper, got downhill, had a layup in this one. He had a few threes that I thought really just spoke to how confident he is as a shooter and how smooth the shooting stroke is looking. Like, he had a 3 in transition where MPJ, hit him with a get-ahead pass. He came up the floor. A guy was kind of backpedaling. He had a behind-the-back step back and just cashed a 3. He had another 3 where MPJ got doubled. He caught it on the right wing. Had to be at least 5, 6, 7 feet behind the 3-point line, pulls up with, complete confidence, splashes it. So this is just like a normal Yegor Dioman performance at this point. Like, I think 13, 4, and 4, didn't turn the ball over that much, more 3-point volume than 2 volume, but he shot well from 3 and was able to make an impact. So I think that, it's just a good performance from Yegor Dioman. I think that, like, this is kind of like a baseline of what you're expecting from him on like a solid to above average night. And the fact that he's been able to do this pretty consistently over the last, month or two, it's a really good sign in terms of his development moving forward. And I'm excited to see, what it looks like him for the rest of the season, where I think his minutes are going to continue to scale up as the year progresses. But that's all I got for you guys on today's episode of Locked On Nets. If you guys do not already, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Nets on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, whether Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you enjoy the content, take a second right now, smash that like button, leave a comment, leave a 5-star review. Anything you could do to engage is much appreciated. And that's got a couple days off. Then they're going to be back at Barclays Center on Wednesday. So I'll have coverage of all that and more when I'm back tomorrow talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.